place financially in my life where I completely understand why people commit fraud.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
Yep, a lot of people are house poor, and a lot of them are not discussing it, and maybe they're not discussing it because the alternative is to be rent poor. And they would prefer to be house poor before they become rent poor. Because there's a lot of people who are renting and they are struggling to save. And at the end of their lease, they have no equity or anything to pull for. And before you know it, you're in this cycle where you've been renting for 5 years, and 10 years, and 20 years, and you're still rent poor. So we have to start thinking about the alternative, right? What is the alternative? I don't have all the answers. I don't think everybody should own. I don't think everybody should rent, but we need to start discussing what exactly is the alternative.
I bought a house when I was 26 and fell immediately into poverty. Okay, when I lived with my parents, I was living my best luxury lifestyle. I went to South Korea, bought a 2,000 plane ticket, didn't even blink twice. I went shopping, luxury goods, all that. Was traveling, was just, I was living it up. I felt rich. I had no bills. And I had a full-time 9-to-5 job. I was working as a nurse, okay? I was killing it. I bought my own house. That first mortgage payment came in and I was like, oh, this is a situation. But at first you think you can handle it, right? Like, what's a couple thou? What's a couple thou? I got it. But then the pipes in my 80-year-old home broke immediately as soon as I bought the house. Wiped out my savings. Then another pipe in a different area of the house broke. Okay, I'm struggling. Okay, I need help. Then my neighbor's pipe, it was a twin house, her pipe broke. And she didn't believe that her pipe broke, but her pipe broke on my side of the house. So all of that water that was coming down was spraying into my home. And then my water heater broke. When I tell y'all, I went from living in the lap of luxury to destitute immediately. Now, don't get me to fooling y'all, because it was worth it in the long run, because that house is now worth like 2 times what it was worth then. So I'm actually doing pretty good. But at the time, when I tell you I was struggling, I had to go to my parents every other day for dinner because your girl could not feed herself.
There is nothing more that I love in this world than being right. Last October, I posted a video about why I decided to not go through with purchasing the home that I was going to buy on a I think it was like a 6.5% interest rate, even though mortgage lenders and realtors were telling me to buy because I can always refinance later. I did not go through with it because I did not want to be house poor, which is exactly what would have fucking happened had I went through with that. It is now about 6 months later, 2024. Where the fuck do y'all see Jerome Powell about to cut interest rates? I'm only 25, fresh 25, recently turned like 2 weeks ago. And even I knew this fucking economy was in the gutter. So for you guys who have been in this industry for over a decade to sit here seeing the signs that y'all saw and to still influence and persuade people to go through with purchasing these homes because you guys wanted to make a quick fucking buck, you're going to hell. It is now Q2 2024 and I've seen fucking maybe 20 TikToks about people either in foreclosure or about to go into foreclosure. And this is why I always say it's so important to live below your means, because in reality, especially if you're middle class, we're all about a layoff away from going into foreclosure or being evicted from our fucking homes. Truly. Especially in this fucking economy. It's taking people damn near about a year to find a new job. And even then when they do, it's not paying what they were getting paid before.
I too was about to purchase a home last year and I just couldn't go through with it because my main thing was that I don't want to be house poor. It did not make sense to me. And as a millennial, we know that buying a home is really the signature to your next chapter in life, right? It's a special moment. It's something that you should celebrate yourself in and you should find it as a big moment. But a lot of us just feel when we weigh the pros and cons, having a home really means buying it, signing your name on the dotted line, and then being house poor. And yes, I'm someone who believes you should not live above your means and consider, going to a place that is more affordable, but I live in the DMV.
A lot of people cannot make progress financially because they are house poor and they probably don't even know it. Being house poor is when you own a home that you cannot afford. What does that look like? When you have a payment that is a very big percentage of what you make monthly and all you can afford basically is to pay the mortgage. By the time you cover all your house expenses, you are basically left with nothing. I think it's important to talk about this because people are under the impression that as long as you own a home, you're winning. And that is not the case. If you are owning a home stressed out because by the end of the month, you have nothing left, you cannot afford that. That is what we call you bought too much house. With your monthly income, you should be able to pay your mortgage, set money aside, invest, basically still have a life, right? And not feel like you're drowning and not feel like you can't breathe. The biggest, smartest way to do this is waiting to buy a house when you are ready. Not when the pressure is, when are you going to buy a house? When are you going to buy a house? Oh, everyone buys a house when they get married. Why aren't you? No, you need to buy a house when you're ready. Doing this when you're ready looks like this. You should be debt free. You should have an emergency fund and you should aim to have a really good down payment. 5, 10, 15, 20% down. And that will give you margin. That will give you breathing room. That will make sure you are doing this the right way. So don't let anyone pressure you into this. Buying a house is the biggest expense you're ever going to make, at least for most of us. Make sure you're doing this the right way.
What does it mean to be house poor and why you don't want to fall into this trap? Essentially what that means is you can afford your mortgage payment, but you can't afford anything else. So are you going to be taking your family out to dinner on the weekends? No, because you won't have the money to do that. Now, when you're shopping around for your beautiful home and you find one that you're interested in, you can get a breakdown from previous owners of what the average cost was for their electric bill, their water bill, cable. You can get average costs for all of that. So it is definitely something you want to be aware of, especially if you live in Arizona where I live, because the AC bill, oh my gosh, that can be through the roof on its own. Also something to think about is if your taxes or insurance goes up, is that going to throw your house payment up to an unaffordable amount? Now for me personally, I have downsized in house 3 times since I lived in Arizona. 3. I had a house that the average electric bill in the summertime was $500 plus. So now I'm in a smaller home that I can manage and I can do everything else that I want to do. So there is something to be said about not having the big house, but having a manageable house that allows you to live a lifestyle that you want to live outside of the home.
My comment section was full of people telling me, you just want to sell your house and not own a home because you lazy. Owning a home is not for the lazy. Nigga, I'm lazy. So fucking what? You know what I'm saying? Like, fuck that. Nigga, I'm not dealing with all that land, bro. If you have ever dealt with acreage, bro, you know that shit is not no easy task, bro. It's maintenance that go into it. Really taking care of your house it's a lot of time, effort, and energy that go into that shit that I don't personally want to deal with right now. I'm 24, bro. Y'all niggas is not about to force me to live like no 40-year-old man, retired man that gotta go outside and fucking hack his weeds every day and shit, bro. No, I'm not doing that, nigga. I want to live in an apartment. Fuck that.
Buying a home as a single parent is a bad idea. I'm a single parent who bought a home and I am thousands of dollars in debt. I thought that buying a home would be the best thing for my daughter and I. I didn't take into consideration property taxes. My mortgage went from $1,400 to $1,900 in 2 years. I'm in debt because I had 3 water leaks. Not only did I have to pay the rise in property taxes, but I had to pay for the maintenance in my home. I definitely believe that homeownership requires 2 incomes. All of the things that I could do before I bought the home, all of the things I could provide to my daughter before I bought my home, I can no longer do. I am what they call house poor. If you are a single parent looking to buy a home, I hope you have thousands of dollars in savings. Equity is cool and all, but when it comes at a price, I don't think I'm willing to pay it anymore.
There is a huge misconception between what you can get approved for and what you can actually afford. The bank is not concerned whether or not that makes up 50% of your monthly income. The bank is concerned with whether or not over time you can make due on your loan, even if that means you can't afford your groceries that month. According to our credit score, our monthly income, the down payment we would have, and the current interest rates, we technically qualify for a $650,000 to $700,000 house. However, that would make our monthly mortgage payment around $4,000. That is 40% of our monthly income. I am not comfortable, as a homeowner even more so, spending 40% of my income on my mortgage. That leaves no room for savings, no room for anything else, let alone the homeowner emergencies. There are too many people who are house poor in this country because of this exact thinking.
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
So what do you actually do when you're house poor? So you just bought a house, the upkeep on it, the mortgage on it, all the interest payments, everything is so expensive. Let's say you were renting before for like $2,300, and then you bought a house, and now you're paying $3,300, $4,000 a month. What do you do? I think this comes down to your individual situation, how long you prepare to live in that exact house. Usually what happens is if people can find a better rental deal, they'll either just go and rent. You're better off like literally go to a cheaper rental, renting it out if you can. Let's say you got a big house that you don't really need, that you like over purchased, like you bought something too big for yourself. You can always consider renting it out, but a lot of times that could be problematic because if you're in really tenant-friendly states, you actually might get a problem tenant that causes you a lot of damage. So at that point, you can decide two things that is possible. One is potentially short-term rentals. Maybe you're in an area that allows short-term rentals, like an Airbnb. You can rent it out on the short-term market where you can get a really nice return on your money and not have to deal with the pain and suffering of a bad long-term tenant that has all the power of the legal powers that be behind them. And then number two is you can actually consider selling, because unless you are planning to hold this property from 5 to 10 years, it's just going to be headache and pain and cost all the way up till then, right? Because your interest, so much of your housing payment is not going to building equity. It's going to pay interest, and you're paying taxes, and you're potentially paying co-op and condo fees. So at a certain point, you really have to think like, am I willing to keep putting in something called sunk cost at that point? It's just money that you're throwing away. Like, am I willing to do a sunk cost, or can I find a way to find cheaper housing that actually is more or less like half of what I would have sunk into this primary? And at that point, rent looks like a really good deal. And there are rental deals really all the time. There are landlords that are looking to rent. There are big buildings that are getting set up looking for good tenants. Like, there's a lot of rentals available if you know where to look. So just do your math, do your cost benefit analysis, do your risk analysis. You might need to sell. You may be able to convert it to a short-term rental, or you do the third thing, which is just put up with it and keeping house poor. I mean, all of them are options. And that's the thing. If you can afford it, you can keep carrying a dead house for as long as you like until you finally one day inflation catches up. But that could take a while. Of course, you can always get roommates. But a lot of people who buy a primary, they're not looking to get a roommate. A lot of people who get a primary have this like vision of like owning and this romanticized notion about it. And they were not planning on getting roommates. That is not what they wanted to do. They did not want to be this like roommate landlord situation, which can get very awkward and unsafe for women who just don't feel comfortable with that sort of situation. And you might have heard horror stories of like squatters living in your home and not leaving. That is also a potential risk. Once they get a certain amount of time into your house, I mean, there's really very little recourse you have against them depending on the tenant laws of your city/state. So nothing is that easy. People are like, oh, well, you can just rent it. Well, you can just get a roommate. It's not that simple. These are people that you're dealing with, and they could be really difficult and terrible to work with. That is why I mentioned selling. Maybe selling, if you're that type of person that just does not want to put up with it, selling could be a good option, to be real. You might not even want to go through the headache it costs to be a short-term rental host. That life's not easy either. I own a bunch of Airbnbs, and it is not a cakewalk. Real estate is work. That's my point. Be very careful before you buy.
My mortgage has gone up another $200. So over the last 3 years, my mortgage continues to increase $200. So over the last 3 years, my mortgage has gone up $600. And it's shocking. It is very shocking because I don't feel like people talk about this. Like, people are all, often glamorizing homeownership, but not really talking about the reality of home ownership in today's economy. So not only has my mortgage gone up, my HOA continues to increase every year. And it's just all shocking. It is all shocking because I feel like it's not spoken about. Like, I live in South Florida, and so I guess this is something I'm gonna have to get used to because everything is sky high here. The property taxes are high, the cost of living is high, and so I guess it's something that I need to prepare for every year because it's just expensive to live here. But a lot of times when you think that you're buying a house, you think that you're gonna have this set rate and that you're good and you won't have to you won't experience any increases like you would if you were renting. But reality check, you will experience some increases, especially depending on where you live at. So I just wanted to make this video to bring awareness around the situation that your mortgage payment can and will increase. And that if you are thinking about buying a house, like, make sure you go into the process being fully informed and aware of what you are signing up for.
Being house poor is one of the most stressful things they can ever experience. Anyone who owns a house or a townhouse or a condo knows exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of the times we underestimate how much a house truly costs. I know that we did. We had no idea that we would spend over 30 grand for this house that we're in right now. We had no clue that the HOA fees would almost increase by 2.5 times. We had no clue. We had no clue that the mortgage would increase by hundreds of dollars every month. We had no clue that we constantly had to fix things in this house. About every 3 to 6 months, something breaks. It is one of the most stressful things ever, honestly. And if you're not prepared to be a homeowner, don't do it. Do not put yourself through that stress.
Unpopular opinion, but owning a home low-key sucks. And I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I feel like since I was younger, I've just been made to believe like this is the goal. Like once I, get into a home, like I'll figure the rest out. Like owning a home, it's always been drilled into me. Like that's the goal. And now I semi-regret it. Like the bills don't stop. No one really warns you about like how much money you need to have saved before. My friend luckily did tell me I need to save a lot because my friend told me this right when I was in the home buying process. So I did have some money saved and I've almost blown through all of it already. Like there's so much stuff that needs to be done. Like even though you have all these stipulations on like what you need to fix before, like it's just all these unexpected bills. And then I'm being told property taxes keep going up. I just keep getting bill. And I thought I got a good deal on my mortgage and, my other bills, and I accounted for most of it, but it's just like the unexpected stuff. Like now that you're a homeowner, it's all on you, which I knew before, but I don't think that I realized how much money it was going to be. Like, if your air goes out, you have to put money to work on like certain things. Like I know there's always projects going on in your house, but if anything breaks, it's necessary, your plumbing, all of this stuff. Like some of it is covered by homeowners insurance, but like not a lot of it. So if you're thinking about owning a home, like I would recommend that you have so much in savings, like not just a couple grand, like way more than that, because I am drowning. Like I am just, having such anxiety. The holidays are coming up. I have yet 2 young kids. It's going to be our first Christmas there. And I'm going to try to make it special. So I'm trying to find all these like deals and stuff. And it's just like, I barely am making it. Like I am barely making it. Like I can barely afford my bills as it is. And then you get bills constantly. So I would really recommend thinking about it. I just don't know if it's worth it. Like the homeowners, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Just keep that in mind, guys.
Yes! Okay, yes, someone said it. There are so many reasons why this happens, and I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to touch on it later, but I will say this now. Just because you get approved or pre-approved for a mortgage, it doesn't actually mean you can afford the house. There's so many other things that you have to take into consideration. Property taxes, future property taxes, maintenance of the house, and any other bill and expense that comes with the house that you probably haven't even thought of or probably even budgeted in. Me, in my case, I can afford the house that I live in. I've considered these things. I made sure to check all of my bases. I'm living below my means. And I think that's because people don't consider that. I think that's the reason why a lot of people become house poor. Now, I understand there's a whole system out there that prevents people from becoming homeowners, but we'll touch on that later. But a little snippet.
It feels like we have now entered into an era where if you want to buy a house for the first time, you're going to have to accept being house poor. Being house poor is when a substantial amount of your income, more than 30%, is going towards your house expenses. The average salary for 35 to 44-year-olds in the US is about $63,000. If we're using the general rule of thumb, you shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your gross pay on housing, and that includes all housing costs. Let's say you're making that $63,000 a year, pre-tax, mind you. That means you can afford approximately $1,500 in housing expenses every month. $1,500. That might be doable if you're able to find a home that costs less than $200,000 and your interest rate is about 6%. But of course, guess what the average home cost in the US is right now? It is double. It is $412,000. Let's say somehow you were able to get that 20% down. That means just your mortgage payment on a 6% interest rate would be about $2,000 a month. If you're making about $63,000 a year, that's about 40% of your gross pay. And keep in mind that 30% of your housing costs is inclusive of all housing costs. What people forget is when you buy a home, your mortgage is like the minimum that you're going to be paying on a monthly basis. You're also going to have utilities, you'll have insurance costs, you're going to have other costs associated with homeownership, and you should be saving a portion of the value of the home every single month for repairs. All of this is to say, if you're feeling like, holy crap, I feel like I'm never going to be able to buy a home unless I just literally only can afford to pay for my home. I genuinely don't know how the average American is doing it, because even as a high income earner, I'm looking at the housing market and I'm like, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to afford to buy a house as a single woman who doesn't want to be house poor. And what I have had to come to terms with is I suppose that's okay, because there are other ways to invest. There are other ways to build wealth. But it is frustrating because, like, I would like to have another cat, you know? But I'm not willing to move to the middle of nowhere America in order to be able to buy a $200,000 house. You know what I mean? So I guess it's just about prioritizing what's important to us. But it just feels like the American dream of being able to own property shouldn't be this out of reach. It shouldn't be this hard to be able to buy property.
I bought a house when I was 26, had a lot of unlucky things happen, and then I really struggled for about the first year. But your girl escaped the struggle, and here's how I did it. I was meticulous about saving money everywhere that I could. Instead of shopping at more expensive grocery stores like Acme, I was going to Aldi, hitting up the Aldi every time I need to go grocery shopping. I would check in and see what my parents were having for dinner, and I would go right on there. Instead of making my own dinner, instead of, paying for some food, ordering out, nope, mom and dad's. I made a budget in Excel and followed that thing like it was my religion. I did have some money left over for like fun things. So whatever that fun money was, let's say it was $100, I'm putting that in cash. And if I run out of that 100, guess what? It's over. No more fun for me. I also left bedside nursing and went into a higher paying career. And once I was in that career for about a year, I hustled to get a promotion. A few years into owning the home, I also got married. And so I was able to share the costs of home ownership with another person. If I hadn't gotten married, I might have considered like taking in a roommate, maybe two, to try to defray some of the costs that way as well.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.